night and what happened, they are your supposition. They're not facts,
well, then,
are they? They are what
there.
you believe to have happened.
That's the evidence that's been released from the police department. That's as close to facts as we have right now. But I'm confident when the rest of the facts and we're able to show it in the court of law through admissible evidence, that it will show that George Zimmerman was acting in self-defense. And all the things that you were just stating, well, he went to the 7-Eleven, was only going to get Skittles. That wasn't released in the police report. I'm just going by what's there, and I'm giving you an interview.
Well, wait a minute. Sorry, I have to jump.
My statement, you're going to keep interrupting me.
Mr. Sonner, let me just jump in there. Of course it's not in the police report. Trayvon Martin was dead. How could it be in the police report he'd gone to buy Skittles?
That's right. It's not in the police report, is it? That has not been released as a fact. And the only thing I've stated to you are things that have been released as facts from the authorities. And when this case goes to trial and the rest of the facts are released from the authorities, you will see that George Zimmerman acted in self-defense that night. And the rest of what you're telling me, you're trying to litigate this case here. Do you have some other questions for us so we can move on? If there's some question about
I do. Let me ask this.
Or something like that, then we can answer those.
Why don't you acquaint me with the American legal process then? Is it a fact that your client has told his version of events to the police and that actually that is what you're basing factual evidence on? The word of George Zimmerman to the police on the night. You have no other factual evidence to support the fact that he had been set upon by Trayvon Martin, do you? It is the word of your client to the police, unless I'm wrong.
Or wrong. And, let me try to put this in a little bit of context. First of all, his statement shouldn't be discounted immediately just because he's the one that you'd like to have convicted. Second of all, we have an eyewitness. If he wasn't set upon, we've got an eyewitness that says that Trayvon Martin was on top of him, beating him in the face, that he was on the ground crying for help. It's a fact that that statement was made. Whether it's a fact or not, if he's telling the truth, it's a fact. If he's telling a lie, it's not. But one thing is absolutely certain. No one came out that night, and no one has come out since to indicate that they saw this physical altercation started by George Zimmerman. That's the supposition that you like to go with. You don't like the Second Amendment.
You keep putting words into my mouth, and I'm not saying that. As far as I'm aware, there is no eyewitness that has seen Trayvon Martin, an eyewitness that saw Trayvon Martin land the first blow. Is there?
Sir, I will tell you there's evidence that will come out in a court of law that will be admissible that will show this. And let's stop litigating it. Do you have another question for us? He wasn't arrested that night because, based on the police investigation, they didn't find probable cause to arrest him. That's what happened. Is there another question that you have? Because we're going around and around.
One final question.
Piers, let me make.
Well, they're important circles, actually, and I think they're important circles. And I think the pair of you telling me that I'm trying to convict your client is a massive misreading of what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to get to the truth.
Okay.
And my final question can be for either of you or both of you. Do you expect George Zimmerman to be arrested imminently?
No. What is imminently? How close? How soon is that?
In the next few days, next couple of weeks?
I would say certainly not in the next few days.
Right, but is there an expectation that at some stage George Zimmerman will be arrested on your side?
If the grand jury hears all the evidence that we know to exist, and they apply the law as it exists in Florida, not Great Britain, then he will not be arrested in the next few days or the next few weeks or ever. They'll come down with what's called a no true bill, and they'll make the determination that all of the evidence, forensic and otherwise, is consistent with his explanation of self-defense. That's what Florida law calls for. It doesn't call for arrest him and then make him prove their innocence in court.
No, I understand that, but as far as British law is concerned, if this had happened in Britain, there would be no stand your ground defence, and he would have been arrested. And I feel more comfortable with the way we do things in this particular matter. But, gentlemen, thank you both very much for your time.
Sure.
When we come back, I'll get to Trayvon Martin's family attorney, Ben Crump, and get his reaction to that extraordinary encounter.
I believe that George Zimmerman hunted my son like an animal, tried to detain my son. My son tried to get away, and because he could not detain my son, an altercation ensued, and my son was shot and killed.
Well, Trayvon Martin's mother told me last week about what she thinks happened the night her son was killed. And back with more on tonight's big stories, Ben Crump, attorney for the Martin family. Mr. Crump, I'm sure you were listening there to my interview with the two attorneys for George Zimmerman. It got pretty heated. I think some strange suppositions on their side that I was trying to convict George Zimmerman. That certainly isn't my intention. I'm just trying to get to the truth here. When you listened to what they said, what was your reaction?
Well, obviously, they did not want to look at the facts that have been released by the police department, the fact that it is highly unusual that someone can kill someone in cold blood and that person not be armed, and George Zimmerman has a 9mm gun. And even the 911 call, there are several facts that are going to come into this trial. If George Zimmerman, this armed vigilante, is arrested for killing Trayvon Martin, the problem is he has not been arrested. And they talk about trying it in the media and having crowds and rallies. I submit to you, Piers, had it not been for the nationwide outrage, his death would have been swept under the rug. When Tracy Martin called me, I believed in my heart of hearts. I told him, you don't need me. He's going to be arrested. A neighborhood watch volunteer with a 9mm gun kills your unarmed teenager, and you don't think he's going to be arrested? I said,
Tell me this, Mr. Crump, because one of my points of contention with the attorneys for George Zimmerman was that they clearly believed that from the moment he made that call to the 911 operator, that he was then acting as a neighborhood watch official. He had moved into that capacity. And my understanding was that neighborhood watch officials are not supposed to be armed. That is against the code of being a neighborhood watch official. They clearly think it's perfectly okay that he could become a neighborhood watch official in that time frame, in that moment, and still have this weapon on him that he can use to kill somebody. Now, clear that up for me legally.
Absolutely, Piers. There is no neighborhood watch organization, auxiliary or anything would tell you that a neighborhood watch volunteer should carry a 9mm gun or carry any kind of armed weapon. In fact, it's the direct opposite to say that you are not to carry a gun or any kind of other weapon. You're simply supposed to do what the words say, neighborhood watch. You see something, you call the police, you let the authorities handle it. Had George Zimmerman simply done this would have never happened. He would be going about his life, and more importantly, Trayvon Martin would be living to pursue his dreams and his life goals, and his mother and his father would be grieving and really not even having
Mr. Crump, Mr. Crump,
because they have to come here and push for him to be arrested. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
Let me jump in here. Let me be fair and balanced about this, because let's assume, for argument's sake here, that George Zimmerman, in defiance of the instructions he was given by the 911 operative, begins to follow Trayvon Martin. He then says that he lost track of him and began to walk back to his vehicle. And at that point, out of nowhere, Trayvon Martin attacked him, wrestled him to the ground, and was punching him repeatedly, and he feared for his life. Could that construct of events, could that actually be what happened? Could Trayvon Martin have been so unnerved and scared by what was going on that he did defend himself, exercising, many would argue, his own right to stand his own ground, his own right to self-defense, and got in first against somebody who was following him, who he may have believed was armed, had no identification as any kind of neighborhood watch official or anything else? Could it be that he did attack and jump on George Zimmerman?
Well, I don't think we could say attack. We could say he defended himself, because Trayvon Martin had every right to defend himself against George Zimmerman, who approached him. And think about it. George Zimmerman didn't have a badge or anything official. He had on a sweatshirt and some jeans. We've all seen the video now. So we believe Trayvon Martin went to his death not knowing who this strange man was that was approaching him. And I want to just clear one thing up, Pierce. And you have to really, really just use your common sense. He says he's going back to his vehicle, and that's where he's attacked. Well, the problem with that is where Trayvon Martin's body is found is many, many yards away from his vehicle. It supports the contention that he had pursued Trayvon Martin. Trayvon Martin was about 70 yards from the back door of his father's girlfriend's house. He was almost home. And what did they find? The lawyers made a big point of saying we don't know what he went to the store for. They found a bag of Skittles and a can of Arizona iced tea. That is in the report. That's what he had in his possession. So one can logically...
Let me jump in again. Let me jump in again. On this particular point, though, on the Florida Stand Your Ground law, if we assume that George Zimmerman was telling the truth and that he was heading back to his vehicle and Trayvon, perhaps freaked by what was happening, attacked him and a fight ensued and he got on top of him and was beating him repeatedly, is it possible, under the law that is particular to Florida, under the Stand Your Ground law, that created a set of circumstances where George Zimmerman, fearing that he may be under threat to his life, was able, under the law, to pull his gun out and use it? Can you accept that could be a possibility?
Certainly that's what he wants to assert, but we have George Zimmerman's version, and factually it just doesn't work for George Zimmerman. When you look at the facts, the objective facts, not what he's saying, but the objective facts, facts like the fact, if he's at his car, how does Trayvon Martin get those 100 yards away or so to be in the backyard of Mary Kutcher's house dead? What, did Trayvon Martin attack him to his car and then George Zimmerman carry his body behind Mary Kutcher's house? That's not logical. We hear the 911 tapes. It connects the dots. And then the other thing is he's on the phone with the young lady talking, and it is clear that if he's on the phone at 7:12, that call lasts for 4 minutes. George Zimmerman calls 911 at 7:11. We're trying to find out where is it where all those things that Trayvon has supposed to say to him, why isn't that recorded anywhere? That's just George Zimmerman's word and nobody else. And one more important fact. You know, when you think about this self-defense claim, we've heard his father say his head was beat into the concrete or the pavement repeatedly over a minute, and then his nose was broke. Well, that videotape, I submit to you, Pierce, To America, was taken about 35 minutes later, and you know, they try to enhance it, and they're trying to find a weapon. They're trying to find a cut on his head. But how bad is it if they didn't even put a Band-Aid on it, Pierce? How much force was asserted? Why didn't he go to the hospital if he was beat up that bad? You know, it's one of those things. Trayvon Martin is dead. He is dead. And you are saying to everybody in the world, I had to kill him because he had busted my head and broke my nose. And so we're trying to look at that, and it doesn't appear to be there. And we are not asking that he is convicted. We only want to have him arrested so we will have the day in court and this won't be swept under the rug. And that is just simple justice. That is all his mother and father have asked for from the very beginning. And you beg the question that why is it this double standard? Would Trayvon Martin been given all this consideration had he been the trigger man?
Mr. Crump, I'm going to have to leave it there, but there are lots of unanswered questions still. And in the end, as you rightly say, Trayvon Martin is the one who lost his life that night.